So summer solstice, June 20th, 2024, is a doorway that we walk through every year. And just like a new moon or full moon, we walk through it where it's similar. You know, summer is always going to feel like summer, or in the northern hemisphere, here in the southern hemisphere, feels like something else, but it's similar each year at this time. And yet there are different circumstances for each time we walk into, and I'm just going to treat this like northern hemisphere, but you just can still think about this if you're on the other side of the world. In the southern hemisphere, you just, use your own reference point. It feels similar, but it's different at the same time. We know what to expect from the seasons in our hemisphere, yet each year we go through it, something unique, some new situation or feeling is in our lives. And so in this particular solstice, we have the feeling of Neptune. Neptune is really dominating this particular solstice. And it's interacting with the sun and Mercury and Venus during the time around the solstice. And also Neptune is in its sort of last degree of Pisces, and then it will be moving into Aries. So it's at a kind of a pivotal stage of Neptune. And so Neptune's making itself known. Neptune is known in our lives for, and remember, I think of astrology as happening inside of us. So those times when we feel foggy and confused, the most foggy, where our finances are confusing, our relationships are confusing, our kids are confusing, work is confusing, wherever it's impacting your chart, those are the times when Neptune's really there making itself known. It's not doing it just to mess with you. It's not, it feels like that. It feels very tricksterish, like it's just trying to mess with you, but it has a higher purpose and a higher goal. And it's for you to reach deep inside yourself and find your own clarity. And of course, since we don't, we're not born with some operating manual that tells us this, even in the world of astrology is often very confusing and hard to navigate. There's so many different astrologers. Some of them have training, some don't. Everybody's got their own personal filters they're talking through. So even, astrology is not an operating manual either, even for those of us who've studied it and have been taught it and understand something about it, it's still unclear sometimes. We have to really reach deep as astrologers even. So Neptune is a deeper, more complex experience, and it's really an experience that you're going through with Neptune. It's those experiences of being confused and then finding clarity, or maybe sometimes just feeling like you're perpetually confused. But really, the goal with Neptune is to move you through really stuck areas in your life to a place of clarity so that you move on and you heal and you transcend. There's a big dose of spirituality and a heavy duty spiritual nature to Neptune that you're meant to experience. The most spiritual times in your life, whether they were times of spiritual confusion or clarity, those are Neptunian in nature, and they all serve a purpose. So being confused, while it doesn't feel good, it's a part of the journey that you're on. I would say you're not necessarily meant to stay in confusion. In fact, I think my best guess is that you're meant to move through it. And that part of what you're learning to do is to move through any confusion and fogginess, to find the tools that help you do that, the best spiritual tools, the best self-help tools, the best philosophy that helps you move through times of struggle and confusion. And really, because life is a journey, sometimes you're just learning as you go. And Neptune has a lot to do, I think, with the hero's journey. If you know anything about that, it has very distinct stages, but often in the hero's journey, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of lack of clarity until the very end, or until there's like this pivotal moment of darkness and then the clarity arrives. And that's how Neptune operates. It it can, sometimes Pluto's in there in the hero's journey as well, but Neptune plays a big role in terms of the spiritual movement and the spiritual growth that happens on the journey, and going from confusion to clarity from again and again and again through your life and your journey. So what does that have to do with the solstice? Well, again, Neptune's going to be a big part of it because of where it is. And because it's so active right now, it's moving with the sun, it's in kind of a square relationship at various times around the solstice with the sun, with Venus, with Mercury. And of course, there's more complexity going on around that. But when you have a square, the good thing about a square is when you apply effort, and it doesn't have to be like excruciating effort, and it could refer to past effort. If you've been trying to work on a piece of art, Neptune often influences the arts. That could be anything you consider art or worth doing. So it could be writing. Excuse me, I have to take a sip. My throat's really dry. It could be painting, writing, music. Neptune's very closely linked to music, gardening, decorating, you name it. So some kind of project that you have been working on and that you maybe continue to work on, there's a payoff, or can be when you've applied effort and gone through the challenges with something. So because I'm going to just kind of work with Mercury, since Mercury is going to be on board through this time of the solstice, and I'm working with Neptune. Mercury is about the mind and communication. It's the communication you have within your own brain, your own mind, your own consciousness. It's also the communication you have between yourself and another person, between yourself and comprehending a newspaper, or increasingly newspapers are really online, but reading something, it's your interaction with the news. It's also how you give information and how others give information. Is it confusing? Is it clear? It could be that what you notice around you in the world and in your own life is communication can be so confusing. You can think you're being so clear and you see it and feel it so clearly inside of you. Yet when you speak, people don't understand what you're saying. Or when someone else speaks, you don't understand what they're saying. And that is Neptune at play. But again, it's not necessarily bad, although, if there is a diplomatic effort, or you're trying to, get to some kind of better place in your communication with others or even with yourself, the square is about figuring out how to move through the discomfort of it not being clear to finding the clarity. But also it's useful to notice a lack of clarity. Something can be so unclear and people are just talking past one another and nobody's understanding, and there's a big misunderstanding. Sometimes that in and of itself is so useful to stop and just sit back and notice it. Like, look what's happening. There's this big misunderstanding. Just to sit there with more neutrality, witnessing that moment. And again, it could be witnessing yourself inside your own mind, having a conversation that's confusing with yourself, sitting back from that with part of your consciousness just to neutrally see that. is really valuable. There's a lot of value in being able to witness confusion. Sometimes we don't get clarity until we are able to sit through the discomfort of witnessing confusion, if that makes any sense to you at all. So being willing to be a little uncomfortable, trying to sit back into that neutral stance inside of you. It will help you if you're working on an art project, a communication project, a piece of music, a diplomatic effort, just to sit in that discomfort. Sit with it as long as you can, just as neutrally as you can. And Neptune also governs water. It's like you just allow the waves to come and go. The waves of confusion, the waves of misunderstanding, just, kind of float there with it. And there's a lot of value just in that. Often that's when the clarity can come. Or you just take a different viewpoint, which is more useful. It's very experiential. So a lot of what I'm talking about is something you just have to experience. You have to experience confusion. You have to experience that moment when you get the spot of clarity, when suddenly you transcend the confusion. Just noticing these moments, being willing to be in these moments and to honor them, and to really celebrate the times when you get the little light of inspiration, that light of clarity. That is a moment to really celebrate. And so as we go into the summer solstice time, there is a lot of confusion in the world. The news is awash in misinformation, people just repeating the same stuff that, some other news outlets said. There's a lot of confusion going on. Reporters not knowing how to report. I mean, I don't want to be too hard on the media. They have a tough job because often they're not, the individual reporters are not even fully responsible. Sometimes it's a network issue. But I'm just pointing out that you can see this confusion in the world around you. It's everywhere. So we're living through a Neptunian moment. And the summer solstice in the summer Neptune will be playing out a type of story, as will you in your own life. Inside of you be dealing with, how do you move through discomfort and confusion? How do you find clarity? How do you find healing? How do you find spiritual growth? These are the things just to be noticing and sinking into, floating into, letting yourself float a little bit, letting yourself relax a little bit, and to in certain areas, and I know this is hard for some people, to let go of the steering wheel. Now, there are parts of your life that you want to try to direct, but in the areas that feel the most confusing and the most hopeless, just to let go a little bit, let go, and then see what happens. You don't have to let go forever, but try it, just see. All right, take care.